The wind howled like a wild animal. Dust and sand flew through the sky as a great storm raged across the empty land. The sun disappeared behind thick brown clouds. Most people stayed far away from this dangerous place. But one man was still there, Jacob. A human traveler. Jacob lived alone in a small shelter made of metal and wood. It stood at the edge of the wasteland, far from the busy cities. He liked the quiet. He liked being alone. But on that day, something strange happened. As he sat by his fire, cooking a small meal, he heard a noise. Knock. At first, he thought it was just the wind. But then he heard it again. Knock. Knock. Jacob stood up and walked to the door. The wind pushed against it. When he opened the door, he could barely see through the storm. But then, he saw her. A small alien girl, maybe 6 or 7 years old, stood outside. Her skin was pale purple, her long silver hair full of dust. She wore torn cloth wrapped around her body. Her feet were bare and dirty. Her large, glowing eyes stared at Jacob with fear and hope. She said nothing. She just stood there, shaking. Jacob's heart sank. "Hey, come in," he said softly, stepping aside. She didn't move. He reached out his hand. Slowly, carefully, the girl stepped inside. Jacob closed the door quickly, locking the wind outside. The storm screamed, but the room was now quiet and warm. The girl looked around, unsure. She didn't speak his language. Jacob could see that clearly, but he could also see her pain. Her hands were scratched, her knees bruised. She looked tired, hungry, and scared. Jacob gave her a blanket. She wrapped herself in it quickly. Then he brought a cup of warm water. She drank it fast, almost too fast. "Easy," Jacob said with a small smile. "You're safe now." She looked at him. Her eyes were full of emotion, but she still didn't speak. She just nodded once and sat near the fire. Jacob gave her some food, soft bread and fruit paste. She ate like she hadn't eaten in days. For the next hour, neither of them spoke. Jacob didn't want to scare her. He just sat nearby watching her carefully. Something about the girl touched his heart. She was so small, yet so strong. So alone. Later that night, she curled up in a corner and fell asleep with the blanket tight around her. Jacob placed a pillow under her head and turned off the lights. He stayed awake, thinking, where did she come from? Why was she out there in the storm? Where were her parents? He had many questions but no answers. The next morning, sunlight returned. The storm was gone. The land outside was quiet again. Birds chirped in the distance. Jacob woke up and looked toward the corner. His heart stopped. The blanket was still there, but the girl was gone. He jumped up and searched the whole shelter. He opened the door and looked outside. Nothing, just sand and broken plants. No tracks. No sign of her. Jacob felt a strange emptiness. She had only been there one night, but somehow it mattered. He felt like he had lost something important. He stepped outside and looked at the sky. The sun was bright, but the world felt cold. Who was she? He whispered, and then he said something he never thought he would say again. "I hope I see you again, little one." But he didn't know she would return, and when she did, she wouldn't be alone. 3 days had passed since the storm. Jacob hadn't stopped thinking about the little alien girl. Every night, he sat near the fire, staring at the empty corner where she had slept. He had no name for her. No answers. Just a memory, a pair of glowing eyes and the soft sound of her breathing while she slept. But on the 4th day, just as the sun began to set, something strange happened again. It began with silence. The birds stopped singing. The wind grew still. Even the air felt heavy. Jacob stepped outside with his old rifle in hand. His boots crunched softly on the dry sand as he scanned the horizon. Then he saw it, a shadow moving between the rocks. Then another. He raised his weapon slowly. From behind the sharp stones, 2 figures stepped into view, one small, barefoot, and familiar. The other was tall, graceful, and glowing under the sunset light. It was her. The little girl had returned, but now she was holding the hand of a woman. Jacob lowered his rifle. As they walked closer, his breath caught in his throat. The woman wasn't just any alien. She was breathtaking. She had long silver blonde hair that floated behind her like threads of light. Her skin was soft violet, marked with faint glowing tattoos that pulsed gently. Her clothes were torn and simple, but her presence was strong like a queen without her throne. The little girl let go of the woman's hand and ran toward Jacob. She didn't stop until she stood right in front of him. Then she pointed to the woman, looked up at Jacob, and said her first word in a trembling voice, "Mother." Jacob froze. The woman stepped forward. Her eyes, the same color as the girl's, locked with his. Then she did something Jacob didn't expect. She bowed, a long, respectful bow. Then, using a small translator device on her wrist, she finally spoke, "Human. You saved my daughter." Jacob was stunned. He had so many questions, but the woman spoke again. "My name is Lyra. We owe you our lives." He opened the door and welcomed them inside. Back in the warm glow of the shelter, Jacob sat across from the alien woman and her child. He gave them food and water. The girl smiled now. She sat beside Jacob, holding his sleeve like she didn't want to ever let go again. But Lyra was quiet. She watched him, studied him. "Why were you out there?" Jacob finally asked. Lyra looked down, her translator repeating her soft words. "We were left behind. Our tribe cast us out. My daughter ran from danger. She must have found you in the storm." Jacob's eyes narrowed. "Why would they cast you out? You're her mother." There was a long silence. Then Lyra answered with pain in her voice. "They said I broke tradition, that I was unfit to lead. I refused to give my daughter to the warriors." Jacob felt anger rise in his chest. "They tried to take her from you?" Lyra nodded. Jacob stood up, pacing. "I won't let them take her. Or you." The girl's eyes widened. Lyra watched him carefully. "You would protect us?" she asked softly. Jacob didn't hesitate. "Yes." Outside, the sun had fully set. The stars began to shine. Inside, something new was forming: trust, safety, and the first spark of a bond that neither of them fully understood yet. But deep in the desert, something else moved in the dark. Lyra's past was coming, and this time, it would not ask. It would take. That night, the stars looked like frozen fire in the sky. Inside the small shelter, Jacob tried to sleep, but his mind was busy. He wasn't used to having company, especially not a mysterious alien woman and her silent child curled up by the fire. He sat up, grabbed his coat, and stepped outside for some air. The wind was gentle now, brushing the dry ground like a soft breath. He stared at the dark hills in the distance, wondering who Lyra really was, and why someone so powerful looking seemed so broken inside. Then he heard a sound. A soft sob. He turned his head. There, behind the shelter, kneeling in the dust with her head bowed, was Lyra. She was crying, not loud, but deep, like someone holding back years of pain. Jacob slowly stepped closer. "Lyra?" She didn't look up. Her voice came through the translator, cracked and quiet. "I should not have come back." Jacob frowned. "Why? You and your daughter are safe here." She raised her face, tears glowing faintly on her purple skin under the moonlight. "You don't understand," she whispered. "They'll come. They always come." Jacob sat beside her on the ground. "Then we'll be ready." Lyra shook her head slowly. "They want my daughter because of me. Not because she's weak, but because she's strong." Jacob listened quietly. Lyra looked at him, her eyes filled with truth and fear. "Where I come from, female children born with marks on their skin are taken from their mothers. They become property of the high clans, trained, controlled. She held up her hand and showed him the faint glowing tattoos on her own arm. "She has them too," she said. "Same as me. But I ran. I refused to let her live the same life I lived." Jacob felt a chill run down his spine. "You were one of them?" Lyra nodded slowly. "I was once a war priestess, a symbol. A puppet. They used me. I smiled when they told me to smile. I killed when they told me to kill, until I had her. And then I escaped." Jacob couldn't believe what he was hearing. This quiet, beautiful woman was once a weapon? Lyra looked down again, her voice turning into a whisper. "I'm not just a mother, Jacob. I'm also a target." Silence fell between them. Then Jacob spoke, gently but firmly. "You're safe now. No one owns you here." Lyra looked at him like he had just spoken a language her people had forgotten. Freedom, choice, she wanted to believe it. But she was still afraid. Suddenly, from inside the shelter, the little girl called out in her soft alien tongue. Jacob and Lyra both stood. She ran back inside. But just before closing the door, Lyra paused and looked over her shoulder. In the soft glow of the moon, with her silver hair flowing behind her and pain still in her eyes, she asked, "If they come for her, will you protect her, even if I'm gone?" Jacob stared at her. He didn't blink. "I will." And with that, she gave him a long look, one that said more than words ever could, then disappeared into the shelter. The stars above shimmered silently. But in the distance, something stirred in the dark. They weren't alone anymore, and Lyra's past was finally catching up. It started with a burning smell. Jacob was out back chopping dry wood for the fire. Lyra was inside, quietly cleaning the little girl's wounds with warm water. The day was peaceful. Too peaceful. Then Jacob smelled it, sharp, bitter, unnatural. Smoke. He turned toward the south hills and froze. In the distance, 3 thin trails of smoke were rising. Not from firewood. Not from cooking. From ships. His chest tightened. He dropped the axe and ran inside. "Lyra!" he shouted. She looked up instantly. She already knew. Her face changed. The calm was gone. The fire in her eyes returned. "They found us," she said. Jacob grabbed his bag, checked his rifle. "How many?" Lyra closed her eyes and whispered through the translator. "Too many." Outside, the air began to shake with the low hum of engines. The little girl clung to Lyra's leg, her eyes wide and afraid. "We need to run," Jacob said. But Lyra didn't move. Her voice was cold, quiet. "No, if we run, they'll chase. And they'll find others. I can't let that happen." Jacob stepped closer. "Then what do you want to do?" Lyra looked at him. She placed her daughter gently into Jacob's arms. "Hide her. Protect her." Jacob's heart dropped. "What are you doing?" Lyra walked to the door. Her hand glowed faintly. The old warrior inside her had returned. "I will face them," she said. "They want me, not her." "No," Jacob shouted. "You'll be killed." Lyra looked back at him with a strange, soft smile. "Then they'll know a mother's love is stronger than fear." Before he could stop her, she stepped out into the sunlight. Jacob locked the door behind her. The girl whimpered in his arms, but Jacob held her tightly. Through a crack in the window, he watched as 3 tall figures stepped from the smoke. They were armored, their faces hidden, their weapons glowing. But Lyra didn't flinch. She stood proud and still like a statue of honor carved from the past. The tallest soldier raised his voice, mechanical and cold. "Lyra of House Vitrin, you are ordered to return. Surrender now or face the punishment." Lyra tilted her head slightly. "I do not answer to chains." The soldier raised his weapon, but before he could fire, Lyra moved like lightning. A blast of white-blue light exploded from her hands, throwing one of the soldiers backward. The other 2 fired quickly. Lyra dodged, rolled, and struck again. Inside the shelter, Jacob held the girl tighter as the walls shook from the blasts. "She's fighting for you," he whispered. "And I won't let her do it alone." He kissed the girl's forehead, grabbed his rifle, and opened the hidden trapdoor in the floor. Stay quiet. Stay safe. He dropped her down into the hidden space and sealed it shut. Then he ran outside. Sky burned orange now. The desert echoed with war, and in the middle of it stood a mother, alone. Until the human stepped beside her, Lyra looked at Jacob, surprised, but something in her eyes shone brighter than before. Not fear, hope. Side by side, they faced the soldiers. And this time, they wouldn't run. The desert was silent again. Ash floated in the air like soft snow. Behind them, the battlefield was quiet, just broken armor, burned sand, and smoke rising into the pale sky. Jacob's hands were bruised. His arm bled. But he was still standing. Beside him, Lyra knelt beside one of the fallen soldiers. Her face was unreadable. Her glowing eyes stared at the helmet. Then she slowly reached down and closed the soldier's eyes. I didn't want this, she whispered. Jacob didn't speak. He just placed a hand on her shoulder. From beneath the shelter floor, the small trapdoor creaked open. The little girl peeked out, her eyes full of worry. Mama? Lyra rushed to her, dropping all her strength, all her pride. She lifted the girl into her arms and hugged her tightly. Tears ran down her face again, but these were different tears. Tears of survival. Tears of relief. That night, Jacob lit a fire on the edge of the desert. He didn't return to the old shelter. It was no longer safe. Where will we go now? Lyra asked. Jacob didn't answer right away. He looked up at the stars. Then he said, there's a place. By morning, they were walking through a canyon. No map ever marked. The rocks were high and jagged. The wind didn't blow here. The heat was trapped between the walls. But Jacob walked with purpose, carrying the girl on his back while Lyra followed silently. They passed strange carvings on stone, old bones, broken machines left from forgotten battles. Finally, they reached a thick metal door, half buried in sand. Jacob tapped 3 times. Then twice. Silence. Then the door groaned open, and behind it, a hidden world. Children played by firelight. Old men traded tools. Alien women with tired eyes and kind smiles cooked food over open flames. It was a place of peace, a place for those with nowhere else to go. Lyra stood frozen. What is this? She asked. Jacob smiled. The Hollow Village. A safe place for exiles, runaways, and survivors. A tall old man with a glowing eye and mechanical leg came forward. Jacob, he said with a grin. Back from the dead again? Jacob nodded. This is Lyra, and her daughter. The old man looked at them both. His smile faded. She's marked, he whispered, looking at the girl's skin. Like the warburn. Lyra stepped forward, protective. She's not a weapon. The old man nodded. Then you've come to the right place. Days passed. Lyra and her daughter found peace, maybe for the first time in years. She helped mend armor, taught the village children how to defend themselves. Jacob built them a small hut near the fire pit. The little girl laughed again, chasing the other kids through the narrow paths. And at night, under the stars, Lyra would sit beside Jacob, silent but close. One evening, as the fire cracked and others slept, Lyra whispered, Why did you fight for us? We were strangers. Jacob didn't speak right away. Then he answered, Because you're not strangers now. She looked at him for a long moment. Her eyes shimmered in the firelight. And if danger comes again? Jacob smiled softly. We face it together. Lyra reached out slowly and placed her hand over his for the first time. She wasn't just a warrior. She wasn't just a mother. She was a woman, beginning to feel something again. But even in that peace, far away in the stars, others had started to notice the missing war priestess and her daughter who should have never been born free. The Hollow Village was safe for now, but the past was patient, and destiny was already moving. The festival fires burned long into the night. It was the night of safe passage, a small celebration. The hollow village held once a cycle honoring those who had escaped the old world and found shelter in the hidden one. There was food, laughter, music made from old metal and glowing strings. Jacob sat near the fire, watching the little girl spin with the others. Her silver hair caught the firelight like moonlight caught in motion. For the first time, she looked like any child should, free, smiling, safe. But Lyra was not dancing. She stood in the shadows, away from the noise, her eyes watching, but distant. Jacob walked over and stood beside her. "You okay?" She gave a small nod. "She's happy. That should be enough for me." Jacob tilted his head. "But it isn't, is it?" Lyra looked at him. "You understand too much, human." "I listen," he said simply. There was silence between them. The fire crackled. Children laughed. A dog-like creature barked as it chased a glowing ball. Then Lyra spoke, her voice barely louder than the breeze. "A messenger came today." Jacob turned to her sharply. "From your world?" She nodded. "Not from the tribe, from the high clans." His hand tightened. "They want me to return," she said. "Alone. If I do, they promise to leave my daughter in peace. They offer me honor. A return to the priestess throne. They say she can stay here, but only if I go." Jacob stared at her, silent. Then, "You believe them?" She looked at him. "I don't believe in promises from those who speak with golden tongues and silver knives." He stepped closer. "Then don't go." Her eyes met his. "They'll keep sending messages. Or worse, ships." Jacob's jaw clenched. "Then we fight." She reached out, touched his chest gently. "And when do we stop running? When do we stop hiding?" Jacob's voice dropped. "When you let me stand beside you, as more than a friend." Lyra froze. Then she took a slow step back. Her breathing shook. Her eyes shimmered, not from fear, but something deeper. She dropped to her knees, knelt before him, and spoke softly through the translator. "Then let me ask, human, will you marry me?" Jacob blinked. For a moment, the world went quiet. Even the fire, even the music. She continued. "I am tired of being a fugitive, tired of being alone. I want my daughter to grow up in a home, with peace, with love. And if the price is my pride, I offer it now." She looked up, her voice trembling. "I ask not out of tradition, but from my heart. Will you accept me as your wife?" Jacob knelt with her, took her hands, and said only one word: "Yes." From behind, the little girl squealed with joy and ran to hug them both. The village elders watched from a distance. Some smiled, some whispered, but none interrupted, because they knew this was not a ceremony of power. This was a promise of healing. Far beyond the stars, someone listened. And the next order was already given. "Find them, take the girl. And if he stands in the way, destroy him." Peace had bloomed, but war had already begun again. The sky broke open before sunrise. A deep, unnatural hum rolled over the canyon like thunder. Then came the light, bright white beams shining down from above, slicing through the early mist. They had come. Jacob was already awake, his rifle in hand, standing on the edge of the hollow village. Behind him, others gathered, nervous, afraid, but ready. Lyra stood beside him. She wore no armor, only a simple robe. But her eyes, they burned like twin stars. The little girl hid behind them, holding Jacob's coat. Her small fingers trembled. "One." Villagers shouted from the lookout tower. "Ship 3, maybe 4 coming fast." Jacob looked at Lyra. "This is it." She nodded. "No more running." The first ship landed with a crash of dust and heat. Its doors hissed open. Black-armored warriors stepped out in perfect lines. Behind them came a tall figure in silver robes, face hidden behind a smooth mask. His voice echoed through the canyon. "Lyra of House Vitrin, you were given a chance. Now we take what is ours." Jacob stepped forward. "She's my wife now. You take her, you go through me. The masked figure tilted his head. A human husband? Laughable. Lyra raised her voice. Not laughable. Unbreakable. The masked one lifted his hand. The warriors aimed. Lyra turned to Jacob. Take her. Run. No, Jacob said. I told you. Together. He turned to the girl, knelt beside her. Stay behind the rocks. Don't come out unless I call. She nodded, tears in her wide eyes. Then Jacob rose and took Lyra's hand. Side by side, human and alien, they faced the army. The battle that followed was fierce. Jacob fired with precision, every shot protecting the people he now called family. Lyra fought like a living flame, her power dancing across the canyon, glowing tattoos burning brighter with each strike. But they were outnumbered. Slowly, the enemy pushed forward. Then, just as one warrior aimed for the girl, Jacob jumped in the way. The blast hit him hard. He dropped to his knees. Lyra screamed, her power exploding in a wave that shattered half the canyon wall. Silence fell. Smoke drifted through the air. Jacob coughed, blood on his lips, but he smiled. I'm still here. Lyra dropped beside him, holding his face in her hands. You foolish brave man. From the cliff above, villagers appeared with old weapons, joining the fight. The enemy was pushed back. Finally, the masked one stood alone, broken, his mask cracked. He looked at Jacob, who now stood with Lyra and the girl at his side. You can't protect her forever, the masked one said. Jacob raised his weapon. I don't need forever. I just need today. One last shot. The threat was over. That evening, the village gathered. Jacob sat with a bandage across his chest, Lyra beside him, her head resting on his shoulder. The little girl slept in his lap, safe. A village elder stood and raised a hand. This man, once a stranger, gave us his strength. He gave us his heart. And today, he became more than a protector. He looked at Jacob and smiled. You are now truly one of us. A husband of the exile, a father to the free. And under the stars, as wind moved softly through the rocks, a new story was born, not of war, not of power, but of a human, a warrior, and a child who built a home out of love.